Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bitcoin News Show. I am, of course, your host Vortex. You guys are right here on the World Crypto Network YouTube channel, one of the best places to find news and information about cryptocurrency. We're doing the show a little bit on a different day today. Today's Monday, and I'm still sick. I've been sick for 3 or 4 days, so we're going to try to push through the show as fast as we can without me fainting or passing out. And I think we got a really great show today, guys. We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. We're talking about we got Ryan here from Yours Network, so we're going to be talking a bit about Yours. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin Unlimited and Lightning. So I'm really excited to get to these subjects, you guys. And well, I'm going to introduce our panelists first. So first we have with us today Mr. Chris Ellis. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, buddy. Good to be back. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. And then we also got today Mr. Sam. How do you pronounce your last name? Wouters?
Yes, Wouters.
Wouters. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just call you Sam. I like Sam. Thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate it. And then our special guest today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ryan Charles. How you doing, Ryan?
Very good. Nice to be here. Thank you, Vortex.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for joining. And, Ryan, we've been talking a bit on Twitter, for a while now, and everybody's been kind of really excited about Yours. And I understand that it's getting pretty close to release. You have it on the test net right now, and you hope to go on the mainnet pretty soon. And so if you could just maybe tell everybody a little bit about what you're trying to do with Yours, kind of where it is right now, before we go into the main subjects. I'd love to talk about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so what Yours is basically, let me first start and say that the project has evolved quite a lot. And it started with this sort of big picture idea of, we knew that there were a lot of ways you could put Bitcoin inside social media that would be useful. And so we spent, it's been about 1.5 years total that we've been working on this, that I've been working on it full time, joined by my co-founder about 1 year ago. So 2 of us full time, as well as a sort of small community, quite a lot of people that were helping us along the way. What it is we see this problem of the quality of content on the internet is on average not as high as we believe that it could be. We think it could be higher. We think we could get the right content to the right people better. I think there's a lot of spam and a lot of clickbait, stuff like that on the internet. We would like to make sure the right content reaches the right people. We think that a good answer to this is very thoughtful monetary incentives using micropayments. So basically our idea is a social platform. You could think of it as being maybe something like Facebook or Reddit, although these days we're much more like Medium than any of the others. So think of it that way, something like Medium, but with built-in micropayments. And the simplest model, the simplest way to describe it, which is, it took us a long time to figure this out, but what we've ended up doing is we just have a paywall inside of content. So you can just write an article and you just put, the author decides where the paywall is and how much money it costs. So for instance, I've got 2 test articles up right now where you can read, you read the first few paragraphs or whatever, and then it says, please pay 1 cent or 10 cents to read the rest of this article. Now, so the paywall is just such a simple idea, and this actually has never, as far as we're aware anyway, existed quite like this in a social platform. We also have a whole bunch of other sort of what we call payment models that we'll be adding later for different reasons, to curate content better, to be better at moderating. And always and everywhere, what we're really trying to do is to create just a better social platform with higher quality content through monetary incentives.
Now, you guys are actually building some very specific, some very specialized technology over there to kind of get over the whole block size problem, right? To get over the whole issue of scaling. And just real quick, maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that, how you're actually accomplishing that solution without Lightning.
Yeah, absolutely. So without Lightning is sort of a good way of saying it. So, I mean, I assume your audience is predominantly, they're aware of what's going on in the space. They understand, they've probably heard of Lightning Network, probably know something about it. I stay away from the term Lightning Network because, we're not really affiliated with the people that are working on the Lightning Network, so to speak. But our technology is similar. We read their paper is part of how this happened. Like, we read their paper 1 year ago, and as well as a number of other papers, and tried to figure out how we could implement something like this. So let me back up and give a little bit more context so you know what we're doing and why. We started with this thesis of, we know there are all these uses of money inside social media. For a lot of reasons, we think Bitcoin is the best option for this. But it turned out starting about a year ago, Bitcoin had a problem, which was that the transaction fees started becoming significant. So about 1 year ago, and it's funny if you look at this, I don't have a chart offhand, but the transaction fees 1 year ago today, today is March 27th, 2017. About a year ago, it was about 5 cents per transaction. And today it's increased since then to something like 50 cents per transaction. So Bitcoin doesn't work for micropayments, at least not on chain. I mean, if the lower limit for a payment is 5 cents, well, that's not, that doesn't really reach the ideal of a micropayment. And on our platform, we've expected that the cost of content will be, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, maybe $1 on the high end. Could be more, but we think it's probably more like 25 cents, somewhere in there on average. So a year ago, a 5-cent fee was potentially like, sort of a disaster for us. Like, it's too expensive. We needed a solution. So we read the Lightning papers and we were like, okay, well, we think we can do this. Let's just implement an L2 solution on Bitcoin. There's sort of a totally different route we could have taken, which people sometimes ask us. They're like, well, why don't you just use dollars? Why don't you just use PayPal or something like that? And this has it's sort of like if we had gone that route, we would have had to spend years developing partnerships with PayPal and banks and stuff like that. That would have, I think it's like I expect somebody to try something like that at some point. Like maybe Medium will try that. It doesn't look like Medium's going to go down that route. But for a lot of reasons, that would have been like a social solution to the problem of adding payments. Social in the sense that you got to spend a bunch of time talking with banks and payment processors to convince you to let them do it. Meanwhile, the other route is basically this non-custodial Bitcoin route, where the users are just sending each other money. So we read the Lightning paper, we read these other papers, and we decided to go down this route. It took something like 6 months. I think it was October of last year, 2016, when we announced our prototype of a working version of this. So it's been another 6 or so months that we've been spending a lot of time refining the technology, fixing edge cases, making it work, more reliably. So we now have an L2 solution. Let me describe one other property of this solution, how we distinguish ourselves from the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is really a protocol, and there are a few different companies working on independent implementations of it. Our code is all written in JavaScript and runs in a web browser. As far as I'm aware, we're the only group that did something like this that runs in a web browser. So ours is really intended first and foremost for sort of consumer end users, for normal people. They can just visit the website. There's a built-in Bitcoin wallet that does all this micropayment stuff. So anybody can use it with no install. So that's one difference, sort of the software architecture. And none of the other groups are doing this that I'm aware of. We also aren't going quite as far as the full network, as the full Lightning Network. Our solution is we have to be careful how I choose my words here. So one way of describing it is a trustless payment channel hub. We have one primary node that everyone opens up payment channels to and from. This vastly simplifies the difficulty of making a network like this, because we don't have to solve something called the routing problem that Lightning Network has to solve, because the routes are extremely trivial. Everybody has a channel to this one node, and that node has a channel to the person who you want to pay. So we think of this as being a step towards the Lightning Network. This is the first step. The next step will be sort of allowing anybody to be a node and then figuring out how to route through this network. So that was a long answer.
Cool. Yeah. No, it's great. No, absolutely great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ryan. I know people are very interested to see what you guys are doing over there and how you are going to solve, the problem of microtransactions. And so, one question that came out of the audience is, how do you plan to, from the live chat, this is from the live chat, how do you plan to combat people screenshotting, paying for the article, then screenshotting it and then sharing that on Twitter, for example?
Yeah, good question. So this is something it's pretty important to our users, of course, because many of them, they don't want other people, copying their content and basically, either selling it or just giving it away for free or whatever. So this is the copyright problem, right? This is like, how do you prevent other people from copying your work? We have a number of different answers to this. So first of all, our system is not, there are, compared to say Steam, for instance, sort of a somewhat similar a product. Steam is designed to be censorship resistant as like a first priority. Ours is not. So like we can just delete content. So if someone posts something that's a copyright violation, we can delete it. Now there are a bunch of like subtleties here, and I don't want to scare people by saying something like that because I'm favorable to free speech and things of that sort. But we have to address this problem somehow. So for one thing, just moderation is part of the answer. Humans notice that it's been copied. If you're copying it from another yours user, it's particularly obvious. If you're copying it from somewhere else, it may not be obvious. So here are a few other ways we intend to address this solution over time. One is that there are sometimes ways you can validate the authorship of a piece of content. So for instance, imagine somebody posts a link to a YouTube video. We can auth that person with their YouTube account. So we can at least verify whether they are the author of that YouTube video. Now that kind of puts the problem on YouTube rather than us, because now what's to stop them from copying somebody else's YouTube video and just re-uploading the same video? Fortunately, YouTube does have some tools to deal with this. It's not perfect, but so to some extent we can offload this into some of the other existing social media networks. There are also tools we can use. So there are like services that let you scan against sort of mainstream copyrighted content. So if someone were to upload a book, for instance, we can compare the text to these known databases. And if it's word for word copy of some famous book, well, we can just flag it and say, sorry, guys, I mean, this is obviously copyright. So there are also, sometimes there are cryptographic means that we can use. So for instance, if you were to link to an article, we can detect whether, suppose you put your public key inside the article, and at least you're not just linking to somebody else's article. We can affirm that at least you had enough ownership over it to be able to put your public key in there. So this is a sort of a variety of mechanisms we have. None of these are perfect, but of course, I mean, this is kind of an open-ended problem. I don't think anybody has completely solved this. So
absolutely. And Chris actually, I guess, described it as the analog gap. I think that's what it's called. So that, yeah, I guess everybody kind of has this issue, right? And so that's very interesting, the ways that you guys want to use to solve that. So I think, at the end of the day, if people want to get their content, want to get content, they're going to get content, right? And there's nothing really to stop them from ultimately copying it. But still, most users are honest and they just want to be up to date, right? And so they're gonna be following their favorite people, and they're gonna pay for the stuff that they feel is valuable. So I think that's really cool. And so if everybody if anybody wants to find out more information about that, you guys can all check out yours.org. And when are you guys launching on the mainnet, Ryan?
Yeah, so so my co-founder and I were just sort of running through our issues this morning, trying to figure that out, like how fast can we launch on mainnet? We are soft launch on testnet today. So for instance, if you go to our website, you can load up your wallet. We go to yours.org, our website. Load up your wallet with testnet coin. You can buy some articles I have on there. So the technologies all fit together and it does work right now. But we have just somewhat hard to explain. I'd be happy to if you ask, but I'll skip the technical details. But there are a number of technical reasons why we can't just launch today. I mean, basically, we got to be careful with real Bitcoin, and we've put off some of these really hard problems. They're not that hard. I mean, I think we've solved the hardest ones, but just some hard technical problems we have to solve before we can do real money. So we estimate, as of this morning, this hasn't really been publicly announced, but I'll go ahead and say it. And note that I've been wrong about our timelines before. But we think about 2 months is realistic to launch on mainnet. So today's March 27th, so that'll be May 27. We think that's a realistic time frame. Again, you can see it working on testnet right now. So like the basics are all there. We just have to fix these somewhat non-trivial technical things before we can do real money.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for announcing the date here on this show. You heard it here, folks. First here, folks, May yours is hopefully launching on the mainnet, and I really encourage everybody to go check that out, because I myself personally am not that big of a fan of Steemit. That's another kind of competitor in trying to combine cryptocurrency with social media. And, hey, props to them, for giving it a shot, and that's great, but I just really disagree with the underlying economics of that of their blockchain and their technology. So hopefully we can have more sites compete with Steemit like yours and a bunch more. And what I really like about yours is that it is going to be kind of launching on Bitcoin. At least that's the current plan, right? Are you planning on supporting multiple currencies besides Bitcoin?
Great question. So, I mean, from the very beginning, we've always been exclusively on Bitcoin. There are a lot of reasons for this. The primary reason being we're big believers in the network effect of Bitcoin. So we've got about 3 developer years of effort. That is, roughly speaking, 2 years of my effort, roughly speaking, 1 year of my co-founder's effort, developing Bitcoin software. So, you know, we're built on Bitcoin. We believe in Bitcoin. With that being said, anybody in the space can't help but notice there is a rather large, you know, debate going on right now about what's going to happen with the future of Bitcoin. And I'm not really sure exactly what's going to happen with the future of Bitcoin. But I have to be aware from like a business point of view, look, I mean, it's very important that our users can onboard and offboard. And it's very important that the user is secure, that the system is secure, and that we're delivering on this promise. So you're probably asking this question. You may have seen, I think it was just yesterday, I tweeted something like, please let me, tell me who's big in Ethereum so I can follow some Ethereum people.
Exactly.
So, I mean, you know, this is, we can't just switch to Ethereum. I mean, it's like, even if in like a worst case scenario for Bitcoin, Ethereum just whizzed by Bitcoin, we wouldn't even be able to switch to Ethereum easily. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, I would be surprised if Ethereum surpassed Bitcoin by, say, market cap and things like exchange liquidity and services and things like that. But it is a possibility. So all I'm doing right now is basically trying to be aware of this and trying to figure out, is there any way, should such a thing happen, that we could pivot? Yeah.
For sure. Well, I mean, I think we can all agree that Bitcoin is kind of still the most recognized cryptocurrency, you know, on the planet. So it's definitely a good place to start. I believe Chris had a question for you, Ryan. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, yeah, I have a few thoughts. So I want to try and understand the platform a bit better. I'll start off by disclaiming that I'm the founder of something called ProTip, which you may have heard of, this little browser extension that I made a couple of years ago with a friend called Leo. It was just a very small, modest open source project that is still working, and we still have 500 active users that use it in spite of the alleged blocks, you know, congestion on the network. It still works. And my ambition was never to capture the space, own the space, and I was very tuned into all other efforts like Steemit, like Brave Browser, like SatoshiPay.io, all of these different companies coming in trying to solve this problem. Not because I'm an ambitious monomaniacal entrepreneur that wants to file IP and capture the space, but because I'm a content producer myself, and I was just trying to solve my own problem. So that's the disclaimer out of the way. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about how yours works. Is it a local first application, i.e. can I host my own yours network on my own VPS, or how do I always have to use your website? How does that work?
So we're a social media website. So no, you cannot host your own yours node. This kind of has like a long history because we were originally fully decentralized and we scaled back for primarily technical reasons. It was too hard. So we had to focus on something. So we are a pretty conventional social media website, with the twist being that, you know, I mean, almost all of our engineering effort is on making pretty decentralized payments work on the platform. So it is a normal website. So if you want to post content to it, you go to the website and you post it there.
Okay, that's pretty simple. And so the last person in the chat asked the question about copyright, and I wanted to, by way of, not so much way of question, by way of comment, that is a problem called the analog hole, which you can go ahead and search for in DuckDuckGo or your favorite privacy preserving search engine. And it is an unsolved problem in computer science. We cannot stop somebody from putting a microphone up to a speaker and simply, you know, recording that YouTube track and then uploading it to their website. We cannot stop people right-clicking on images on websites, or even screen capping the screen and uploading the content to their website. That is an unsolved problem. It becomes more problematic with projects like yours, Ryan, projects like mine, and projects like Mycelia that's being done in the UK for the music industry, because now people are receiving money. So, for example, someone could just go off and get the entire back catalogue of the Beatles and sign it with their public key or whatever, you know, signature scheme you want to use, and then claim that they own all of the Beatles tracks and start collecting revenue. And the end user may not be exposed through the user experience to the end user that this is an illegitimate copy. But as far as they understand, they're going through the Yours network, or they're going by some other platform, and to their knowledge, they're listening to a legitimate copy of, you know, Abbey Road, and they don't know where that money's going. It's just going to a Bitcoin address. They don't understand, you know, the whole system. So that's where the liability is and exists. And I believe Brave are doing it in a way where they actually have a business development team that is contacting publishers and is working with them to front load that process to make sure that they're all on board. And then you have a company called Alexandria who are using IPFS. I don't know if you've heard of them. And they're sort of hosting, but that's kind of different to what you're doing. It's kind of hosting rich media, so like videos and so on. And then they're hosting it on IPFS, and then people can pay in Bitcoin and that kind of thing. So there is an existing problem. And at the moment, that problem is solved on the web by companies like Google that have algorithms that run on many powerful data centers across the world that will run, you know, Jacquard, you know, signatures and so on, that will try to detect similarities, because there is such a thing in SEO called spinning. You're all familiar with this concept? So you can take a piece of someone else's work and just rearrange some of the words to make it look like a new original piece of work, and then you upload it to your website and it looks like it's yours. And then because you get all the backlinks and because you know how to game the algorithm, you can then rank to the top of Google. So we have yet to come up with a decentralized Google, if you like, that can solve this problem of you know, authenticating the originator. The best way I've come up with so far is I've said to artists to sign up to Keybase, for example, to post up their keys, post up their Bitcoin addresses, create an HD wallet, publish the XPub of the HD wallet, and then give each track or each article its own Bitcoin address. Would something like yours be conducive to that kind of operational security, where someone could have an HD wallet and then publish the XPub key somewhere publicly, very, you know, loudly across social media?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, you know, let me just, before answering that question, I guess I'll sort of leave it at that. I suppose so. Let me fill in a bit of my own sort of side of this, because I mean, you know, everything you said is very interesting. I don't think I've ever actually heard the term the analog hole, so I'll have to look into that. I've always referred this as the copyright problem, but I'll have to look at that. I'm sure there's a long history here. You know, the way I look at this is you know, when you say the problem is unsolved, you're talking about what I would describe the technical solution. So there's no like solution using cryptography. So let's compare this to Bitcoin for a minute, considering your audience is Bitcoin savvy. You know, you cannot just copy a Bitcoin, right? Like Bitcoin solved this problem of the scarcity of digital assets. It's kind of amazing. I mean, it's very non-obvious how you would do something like this. I mean, I've been involved in, you know, computers my whole life, and you know, many of us just took it as a given. Well, you can just copy a file for free and there's no way to limit it. But it turns out you can build this sort of roundabout system using, you know, this very sophisticated technology. And actually, hey, look at that. It seems like actually Bitcoins are scarce. That's amazing. But so far, it really only works with like quantities. You know, like I'm not aware of, as you say, it's an unsolved problem. Like how could you prevent somebody from just copying an article? I mean, I have no idea. You know, as far as I'm aware, that is unsolved. But there's a whole different way to solve this problem, because the problem in the digital world, and again, I have to express my ignorance because I haven't read the history probably like you have. But, you know, this is not dissimilar from how it works in the analog world. I mean, the copyright problem goes back many centuries, you know, during like things like the printing press and even before that. Now, the problem used to be like, okay, well, you know, before the printing press, you can't just copy a book, right? Because it's really, really hard. You know, you have to have some monk sitting in
Oh no, did we lose Ryan?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no.
Oh no.
We lost Ryan. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get him back soon. Let me just message him real quick, but he'll be back in. He's got the link, so hopefully he'll be back in. But so I think we can move on to the next subject, unless Chris, you have anything else to say on that?
Well,
I do have something to say about it. So,
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
We'll go to Sam first. Go ahead, Sam.
well, to me, it's a matter of I understand the copyright issue exists, but the question for me is that what you want to focus your business on trying to solve that? because it's very much like you can make an incredibly successful business by focusing on things that people want. But if you're going to spend your time like trying to fight off people that do malicious things, then you're kind of like not focusing on what you should really be focusing on, which is creating the network effect, getting people on there and getting them to actually use it. So I think that should really be the focus and not so much the copyright issues, because as mentioned, people will always find ways to get around it. Just like we say now, like Bitcoin can be used for criminal transactions, but even without Bitcoin or with it, people will still do these things. They always find ways around it. So I don't think that's where the effort should be, but very much on making yours, for example, as useful as possible.
Very interesting. Go ahead, Ryan, if you want to continue where you left off.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know exactly where it cut off. It just all of a sudden I noticed you guys were frozen, had to reconnect. But I'll just sort of finish and say there are two ways to think about this. There's what is the technical solution, and I have no idea. I don't know how to solve this technically. Social solution. Now, we're not so much appealing to the law, although we will to some extent. So for instance, as far as we are concerned, you know, original creators on our platform, well, they own the copyright to their work. It's your content, right? So it is actually a copyright violation for somebody to copy it and resell it. I don't know. I mean, if an article is only 10 cents, like, are you going to like call the cops on somebody, right? I mean, like, obviously there's a limit here. What we'll really do is we're just going to have moderation on our platform. So we just have to use these social techniques to limit, you know, the impact of copyright violations, and try to get the original creators paid. We don't really have, you know, long, complicated answers to the sort of the technical problem. We're much more interested in sort of like what is the most practical thing we can do to make the thing work in the near term.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the that's the biggest concern. Like Sam said, I think what people are going to be concerned about more than the whole copyright issue that could take years and years to solve is the fact that it's useful, and you guys seem to be making it very, very useful. And that's what's important. That's how we're going to get people paid is to make the product very useful. So very, very cool, Ryan. Thanks so much for sharing. If anybody else have any other questions for Ryan? Otherwise, we can move on.
Well, not so much a question. I close with this thought, which is that we started off the internet with the Clue Train Manifesto, which opened with the line that markets are conversations, and we started the internet as a very kind of peer-to-peer and decentralized and heterarchy, it's called, as opposed to hierarchy, right? And what it's ended up as, and I don't think this was by any kind of conspiracy or anything, I just think where we ended up with these giant connected components like the Googles and the Facebooks of this world that end up masquerading as the internet itself, like projects like Zuckerberg.com or internet.org or whatever he wants to call it. This initiative to present one social network as the internet itself. And it's important to remember that the internet is a network of networks. Whatever network it touches, it liberates and raises the marginal cost of keeping the contents of that network private. As the antithesis to that, or as the antagonist to that, we have public key infrastructure, which was heavily developed by Zimmerman et al. In the 90s with PGP and SSL and all its different variants. And that's kind of one of the important facets that Bitcoin has. One of the fun facts about cryptocurrency is that there's no encryption. It's basically just signing. But we do have some of those tools that we can use today if we want to get out of this kind of ad model that we have at the moment that really started with, I guess, with Edward Bernays and Freud Communications in the 1930s and World War II. If we want to get away from this kind of advert culture where you're constantly being surveilled by these companies, and now they're using cross-device tracking where they're putting microphones in your devices that are listening to what you're watching on television by way of consolidating and getting a profile on you. If we want to get away from that, what we need to turn the internet into is a value for value exchange. So I would really appreciate more efforts like what Ryan's doing. The more people we have working on this problem, I think the quicker we're going to solve it, and people can start being paid for what they do. Because as I said to James Bond, who's in the chat right now, and we've had many exchanges about the difference between donation and paying, is that a lot of us, you included, Vortex, have given a lot of our time for free. And it's not because we're magnanimous or generous people, it's just because we don't want people to be prevented from discovering our work. We want to share what we have with the world. But at the same time, we have opportunity costs and we have costs of living, and we don't exercise the same rent level extraction on our landlords as we can on our viewers at home watching this video right now. So what we're asking for is people to pay for the value that they receive, and for that to be voluntary. And I'm a big believer that this can work if we want it to, if we really, you know, put the engineering hours into it, and we, you know, are activists this way.
I agree, absolutely.
If I can jump in on that.
Go ahead, Sam, please.
So the way I see this going forward is, like, personally, maybe one of two things. Either we're going to get a social shift where people start to realize, okay, if we really want to have good content out there on the internet, we need to start paying people. But it's also possible that we can't get there. I'm not really sure about that. If we look at music, for example, iTunes first managed to get people to pay again after downloading illegally for so long. Then Spotify did the same thing, like on top of it, kind of. But with content, people have been used to consuming free content on the internet for decades now. And I think it's quite difficult there to get the shift as well. It's possible, but it's also a possibility we won't get there. And then it's indeed going to be very reliant on people that create content being smart about it and finding different revenue streams, which may again lead to capturing data. And then we're kind of back to square one. But personally, I see it evolve in either of those ways there.
Very interesting.
If I could just address your fear there, this is something I've thought a bit about, which is, you know, so one of the things we've noticed when we talk with people about our project, we've been very careful to change how we word things, because it's very common, like if we say something like, we're making Reddit but with money, people will say things like, well, but I would never pay for the trash I see on Reddit, right? They think of it as being like worthless content, this isn't worth anything. And they're definitely right about at least some of it. I mean, some of it is trash, and they're right. They probably wouldn't pay for that. But people pay for things all the time. People pay for things in the real world, and they pay for things on the internet all the time. I don't think people are I don't think they're conditioned away from paying for things. I think if it's clear that it's worth it, they will pay for things. And I think if it works out as we're sort of planning here, when you pay 10 cents for an article, it's going to feel like a deal. You know, it's going to be like, it's actually a really small amount of money, and you're not going to be unhappy about it. You're going to be like, I can't believe that was only 10 cents. You know, that's awesome. So I think if we do this correctly, I think people will realize it's really better for everything. And I think it will be very creator driven, because if it does work for the people creating content, why would you post all your stuff for free on Reddit if you can earn money on something like this?
Absolutely. I get
that.
And I just don't see people like sitting up at night being like, damn, I shouldn't have spent that quarter. I needed that quarter. You know, it's like, you know, when you're paying such small nominal amounts, people are just going to do it. They're just not going to care. And when you have your reputation built up now, let's say you have a few hundred followers on Twitter, well then, you know, people will be able to look at that and say, look, wow, this guy is not just some Reddit troll. I can see he's got a few hundred followers. I can see that he's got a few articles. They're pretty long and they got pretty high ratings. I mean, I think I should pay for this. So people are going to do their due diligence. They're not just going to throw stuff willy-nilly, because even if it is only a few cents, like I think people don't want to distribute value to where they don't think it belongs, right? So I think that they are going to thumb up the stuff they like. They're going to pay for the stuff they like. So and that's what I hope. So very, very interesting. Does anybody else have any other?
Ryan, do you know of a startup called Blendle?
Yes, I've heard of Blendle.
Oh yeah, I figured you would know it, but just wondering, like, because they're doing this too, not with Bitcoin, of course, but in some ways they're like, it's going quite well, but they're also still struggling a bit. Yeah,
I mean, there are a lot of differences. So let me sketch out one sort of, there are a lot of differences, but I think the most important one is they're really not a social platform, and we are. So,
true.
You know, they're more focused on traditional newspapers, right? So they're partnering with the Wall Street Journal and stuff like that and getting them to post newspaper articles. Also, they're based on traditional payments, so they have problems with globalization. So somebody was complaining recently, I think Blendle is like, they're in the US now, but they are not in Canada. So some people in Canada were complaining that, come on, what do you mean? Why are you not in Canada? But with Bitcoin, of course, we can be everywhere with no barrier like that. Yeah, there are those differences. One more difference, their product is also different. It's not simply like a paywall. Like ours is literally just you add a paywall in your content somewhere and you set the price. Theirs is more like you can read the article for free and then it automatically charges you. I'm not sure who sets the price. I don't know whether it's the author. I think the details are better with our platform. So we'll see. There are a number of differences. I think we stand a better chance with getting a larger audience than Blendle. But we'll see.
Yeah, you could also give people options, like allow the author to set a price or just let them.
Oh yeah. like yours has like I've seen some of the slides. Like yours has like so many awesome ideas about different ways to pay. I think Ryan, the paywall is only one of those, right? Like the one you described.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. So we have, I mean, it's been kind of fun thinking about this in hindsight, because the more I've worked on this, the more motivated I've gotten, because the paywall is so simple. We went with this one because it's very simple. It's very easy to understand. There are no like weird legal questions. I mean, you know, you can ask about copyright, but there's nothing about like, we have other ideas that raise questions about, is it a security, stuff like that, which gets us into weird legal territory. So the paywall sort of checks a lot of boxes for us, which is why we're going with this one first. But if you just start brainstorming, what if you had a social media platform with micropayments built in? There are so many things you can do with money. It's very, very interesting. So you can ask if you want to know the details, but the paywall is just one. We have like 10 or 15 other models.
10 or 15 other, like, yeah, that's what it was. That's about right. You guys have like, I was going to say half a dozen, but yeah, that sounds more right. Because they're really, like you said, I mean, with programmable money, Ryan, the sky's the limit with how many different ways that we can allow users to charge for their content. So very interesting. Chris, I think you had one final point.
Yeah, so I'm just responding to the chat. People saying that they wouldn't pay for this show. I don't think they mean that in a bad way. I think what they mean is like, why would I? I'm so conditioned that everything on the internet is free, but everything on the internet is not free. It just feels free, and there's a difference between feeling free and being free. You're not really free, because actually you're paying with your time first and foremost. We're paying with our time as well. And YouTube and Google at large are capturing lots of personal identifiable information about you, and they're serving you ads. So most of the time when you're on the internet, you're paying with your attention, you're paying with your time, and you're paying by giving up some of your privacy. Now you might say, well, I prefer to have the money, but what you're not thinking about is the long-term cost of that surveillance violation that you're suffering right now. And you may not like that as these databases about you grow and grow and get bigger and bigger, you may not like some of the forward secrecy that you're going to lose. You're going to lose a lot of privacy in the future to companies, because there are buyouts, there are commercial buyouts. YouTube and Google may eventually part ways. They may sell YouTube to another company. That company is going to buy all of your private identifiable information. You didn't fully understand the ramifications, because when you clicked accept onto that license agreement, you didn't read the terms, did you? And so in a way, you are paying for it. What I think Ryan and people like us are proposing is a more honest business model, a value for value exchange. You pay 10 cents. That's what Ryan's talking about. That's what I'm talking about. 10 cents. And you build it into the UX. You build it into the user experience. So instead of it feeling like you're paying, you're getting a credit card out, you're signing into a single sign-on process with PayPal. Instead, you front load a wallet and you hit the like button, and the like button pays 10 cents automatically, and it doesn't feel like anything to you. So actually what ends up happening is, the way ProTip works is you pay with your time. It basically watches how much time you've spent on websites that have Bitcoin addresses on them, and then it ranks your top 10 at the end of the week, and it says, do you want me to split these payments between these 10 payment providers? You can either say yes or no, or do it automatically if you want to. And we felt like that overall was probably the most automagic way of doing it. Now you can do it manually too, but I absolutely look forward to all of Ryan's suggestions about velvet ropes, payment tunnels, these kinds of terms, where we come up with creative ways to make content feel free. That's the real goal. Going from freemium to premium, absolutely. And Amanda Palmer has written ad nauseum about how there are always some core supporters that you will have that will gladly subsidize the free riders, right? And we've found that too. We spent how long? Like 3 hours on air before we went to San Francisco Vortex, and we raised 1.2 Bitcoins. That was easily enough money to get us all together in San Francisco to do a couple of shows and stuff. There will always be, and yes, James Bond, you can, troll us all you want, and the other guys, you can troll us all you want, but this is a free market. Like, no guns were involved in this transaction. Those people paid voluntarily. You might disagree with it, but they paid us, and we're not going to say no to that. So, and I think actually a lot of the time the reason people get upset with this kind of payment, they get is because of envy, that they just see us being successful at this new mode of earning money on the internet, and they're like, why don't I get that? Why don't people send me 1.2 Bitcoins to go travel to San Francisco and have some fun? Well, do it. I'm not stopping you. I'll even help you. So
absolutely,
rock on, Ryan. I applaud your efforts. It's really good work.
Absolutely, and I really think that companies like yours are going to be on the forefront of bringing this dream to reality. Turning freemium into premium, and still allowing it to feel free. You know, so I think that's a very, very awesome concept that you said there, Chris. I don't really think I ever really kind of thought of it like that, where we're going to go premium but still make it feel free. Like that's awesome. I don't really think I put that together before, and I think that's what yours is going to accomplish, and so I'm really, really excited about that. So that's awesome, Ryan. And you know, thanks behalf of the community, man. Like, thanks for trying out all these crazy ways of getting people paid. This is the goal. So very awesome. All right, so I think we can move on to the next subject. We got 178 live viewers right now. We got a bunch of people in the chat. The chat's flying by. We're having some awesome conversation. We have some great people here talking Bitcoin. So if everybody could go ahead and just give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and share out the link, tell everybody we're here talking Bitcoin, tweet it out, Facebook it out. I think we can move on to the next subject. Should be pretty fun. See, we're going to be talking a little bit about Bitcoin Unlimited, and I know that you know, some of us here are for Bitcoin Unlimited, some of us here are for Core. So I kind of wanted to get everybody's opinions on what's been going down. So there's been some this last week has been kind of crazy. So, you know, there's been announcements from the it all started with the announcements from the exchanges about how they're going to list Bitcoin Unlimited as the asset BTU, a separate asset class, almost like an altcoin. And then people responded, you know, talking about how then the article came out from Peter R. about how they're going to attempt to 51% the minority chain. And then we're talking about people coming out with user-activated soft forks and then changing the proof of work. And so we're getting kind of crazy at this point. And so I just kind of want to get a feel from the panelists on where we're at and what we think is going to happen. And so, and there, of course, their opinions on the situation. So first, of course, we'll go with Ryan. And just wanted to ask you, Ryan, so what do you think about the current, you know, Bitcoin Unlimited situation? Do you think that that Bitcoin Unlimited is going to get passed? And do you think, what is your, you know, your opinion on their technology as of late, especially with all the bugs that have been coming up and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So I like to say, I tweeted this the other day, that you know, there's sort of two ways you can look at this. One is like what should happen. The other is what will. I'm really trying to focus more on the latter one, what will happen. You know, let me start with sort of my sort of opinion and background and why I think the way that I do, because I really want to write this down in articles. I'm not actually aware of anybody that shares my opinion in every detail. So I come at this from someone that's been in the space way before there was even a debate about this. I mean, based on my memory, like when I used to go to meetups, really way back in the day, I don't remember there being a debate. I remember people saying, well, we're just going to raise the block size when, you know, when it's an issue. So I sort of had always had that in the back of my mind. So the debate, I remember being disturbed when, oh no, the community disagrees about what to do about this. So that's sort of how I came at this whole point of view. So I'm somewhat moderately in favor of a hard fork to increase the block size. Now, what's happened over time is, you know, first of all, you know, people are immediately going to say things like, you know, what about segregated witness and Lightning Network? I mean, you know, my co-founder and I have spent the past year developing an L2 solution, so I'm certainly in favor of all that type of thing. I think segregated witness is awesome. My opinion is, you know, it's very important that Bitcoin continues to grow and gets new users. The worst thing is stagnation. So I don't, you know, I would say I'm moderately in favor of a hard fork to increase the block size. BU is kind of one particular way that could happen. I would be extremely happy with segregated witness as well, and I would be extremely happy with even the UASF. Either minor initiated hard fork or this UASF thing. Anything that ends the stalemate is sort of my opinion. What I think will happen is I think it'll be resolved somehow. I think a hard fork will probably be involved, but that does not mean that Bitcoin Unlimited will necessarily win or something like that. I'm not really sure. So I'll just leave it at that and just say that I'm in favor more than anything of just resolving the debate one way or another so that we can move on and you know, grow Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Just real quick then, Ryan, could I get your opinion on the recent news about, you know, them saying that they're going to have this organizational structure with the president, and then maybe you could also comment on the closed source update, right, that they did recently. Maybe you could give us a little bit of your opinion on that.
Sure. So, you know, this is another thing where like I'm informed by just sort of my long history of experience in the space. What I want to see is multiple different implementations of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin Unlimited wants to have a president, I don't really care if they have a president or not. If that works well for their project, The president of Bitcoin Unlimited is not the president of Bitcoin. I assume they're the president of Bitcoin Unlimited. If they think they're anything other than that, I think that they're mistaken, right? So, what I would like to see is a handful of different implementations of Bitcoin all thriving simultaneously. So that way the power is distributed across multiple different groups. I would like to see Bitcoin, BTCD, Bitcoin Unlimited, Bitcoin Classic, and Bitcoin Core all existing simultaneously. And I don't really see any reason why it couldn't be that way. So then what your other question, you had the president, and then what was the other one?
The closed source update. I was wondering if I get your opinion on what you think about that.
Yeah, well, obviously, this is another case where we have to distinguish between like, what do I think should happen and what will happen? I find it disturbing that there's this sort of closed source element to Bitcoin Unlimited, but I don't want to like place too much blame there. They're certainly not the only ones going in a closed source route. Miners have all sorts of custom hardware and software that they're already running today that's very important to their mining businesses. Many other businesses that are in all sorts of other things, exchanges and whatnot, have a lot of proprietary software. It's different when you're talking about, other people are assuming that they're running an open source implementation of Bitcoin. I mean, it's a little bit disturbing. Like if we were to run, currently we're not running any nodes on Mainnet as a business because we haven't launched live yet. But it's really, I wouldn't want to place my business in the hands of, some closed source implementation of Bitcoin, which really defeats the purpose of a lot of the philosophy behind all this stuff. So I find it disturbing, but at the same time, like I'm actually overall encouraged though that I see multiple different developer groups springing up, and so if that's what Bitcoin Unlimited wants to do, they do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think that that is kind of common consensus among the community that we don't want to just have one group. I think that's kind of, the whole point of Bitcoin is decentralization, right? So I think everybody's on board with having multiple implementations. I personally, love Bitcoin and Bitcore and all of these different, Bitcoin D, all of these different implementations are good for the community overall. They're all a net positive, in my opinion. So having multiple ones. I just, of course, did not agree with the threats of the minority, 51%ing the minority chain and the closed source stuff. That stuff, the most recent stuff there has really made me even more fearful of Bitcoin Unlimited being an actual implementation for security reasons, seeing how their nodes went down and things like that. Anything to comment on that real quick? Or?
I could probably, go on for a whole long time about all the different things that I think about all this. I mean, it's kind of subtle, right? So like, I'm trying to not stake like on one side or the other. I'm trying to, stay on the side of, what will happen rather than what should happen. I mean, look, it's really frankly hard to defend. I'm in the Bitcoin Unlimited Slack channel, actually. I told them right after their last hack, I'm like, guys, this is embarrassing, there's no way to defend Bitcoin Unlimited with this type of, these, crystal clear security problems. What I would like to see is, it's hard, again, it's hard and subtle because I'm not even fully informed about everything. So for instance, I don't really have an opinion on emergent consensus. I have not studied emergent consensus well enough to even have an opinion on whether this should or should not be the way to resolve this debate. I'm really unopinionated about it. So I guess in summary, I'll just leave it at this. I think that although there's sort of a stalemate going on right now, I think it will probably be resolved. And I think that the process that we're going through is really what should probably be expected, given that Bitcoin doesn't have a government or a standards body to guide this. So all the different interests are just kind of doing what they think is best, and that's okay. So they can experiment with doing whatever they want to do. If it works, it works. We'll see.
Very interesting. All right, I think we'll go with Sam next on this topic. What do you think about the recent changes and the recent happenings in the Bitcoin Unlimited world?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned that you think that we should have multiple implementations. And that's one detail I find quite interesting because personally, I agree. I think we should have multiple implementations. But if you look back at the stuff Satoshi said, he was like, well, multiple implementations would be a menace to the network. So I constantly see certain people like pointing to the white paper and being like, we should follow Satoshi's vision, while he literally said, I think this would be problematic. So I feel like, first of all, we should kind of do away with constantly pointing back at the past and being like, yeah, but this is what was said then. because like either you fully do it or you don't do it. But if you're going to cherry pick quotes from the past, then and like build your agenda based on that, it's a bit weird. It doesn't really lead to many solutions because you always get the counter arguments about that. Further, I think like if you look at Bitcoin Unlimited versus SegWit, because that's really like what it's constantly about, the whole debate. I'm personally not so sure if there's two sides at this point, but I don't feel like many people see it this way. Because basically recently Jian Wu said, well, he quoted an article which pretty much said that they don't like second layer implementations because they're afraid of losing those fees. So to me, at this point, it's no longer Bitcoin Unlimited versus SegWit because we are both on the same side. Because Bitcoin Unlimited also wants to have the Lightning Network eventually to be able to scale. It's like in all of their plans. So they need to fix malleability as well. And their idea around that is like flexible transactions, which is in Bitcoin Classic right now, I believe. But they need to fix that as well. But right now the miners, or at least some of them, are saying, well, we don't like any layer 2 networks. Ryan, it's great that you're building yours, but we don't like layer 2 because we can't get transaction fees there. That's what they're saying. So to me, like, it's no longer very much like them versus us kind of thing or the other way around. It's very much like, okay, we need to all together talk to these miners to figure out a long-term solution. And we can focus on the short term now and like pick either SegWit or Bitcoin Unlimited, but whatever we pick, we are going to get into that clash with miners eventually. If that is truly like why they don't want to have SegWit, because I have my doubts about that as well. I'm not sure. I don't really know their minds about it, but if they're generally concerned about second layer implementations, while I'm sure these guys know economics and stuff, and they know that if you get like cases like yours, et cetera, and all of the other great things that have been priced out of the market in one way or another, if you can get those on the Lightning Network, that will raise adoption for Bitcoin and eventually lead to higher prices, which benefits miners who can offer more liquidity on the Lightning Network, et cetera. So I don't really know if that's the true reason, but I guess we'll see and find out.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about Lightning in a little bit too. That's going to be the next up, if we can squeeze it in there, I hope. So very, very, very astute there, Sam. I definitely agree with those opinions. So thanks so much for that. I think we can go with Chris next on this one. The Bitcoin Unlimited, Chris. I'm sure you got a lot to say. Oh, he's already shared his screen.
I'm suffering from fatigue on this issue. Just I've been speaking about it almost non-stop for the last 24 hours. I've been on Whale Pool Team Speak. Which is mostly a trading focused chat room of the YouTube channel. Broadcast is 24/7, and we've had Olivier and we've had Bruce Fenton on there today. And this all kind of kicked off, I guess, because Olivier had worked on a draft proposal for Bitcoin Classic, and it got leaked. And it wasn't supposed to be public, but it basically said that we can use merge mining to fork the network into Bitcoin Classic, which broadly speaking follows Bitcoin Unlimited, and that it could be traded on Bitfinex, and that got leaked, and so everyone went hysterical over it. So I'm going to respond now to this debate with absurdism, and absurdism is a branch of philosophy. You can look at people like Albert Camus for inspiration. I also take my inspiration from Vlad Samfir, who describes himself as an absurdist troll. So I'm going to respond with absurdism, and I'm going to say I am willing to, if people are willing to sponsor me, open source a way for everyone to have their own Bitcoin blockchain. You can fork Bitcoin. I will instruct you on where to find the parameters in the C++ code that will break consensus. You can have 21,000,001 Bitcoins if you want, the market cap. You can change that. You can change the difficulty adjustment time from 14 days to 13.5 days. You can change, all kinds of consensus breaking things. And I will also give you instructions on which PR agencies to contact. I can recommend, for example, Transform PR, muckrack.com. If you want to get corrupt journalists to promote your fork of the UTXO set of Bitcoin, I can tell you how to bribe journalists. I'm more than happy to instruct you in this way. So I'll give you the TLDR on that. Basically, what you do is you short Bitcoin on a high time frame. You start accumulating that short, and then meanwhile, you're working on the back end and you're changing those parameters in the C++ code. Get the website, don't tell anyone. Get the logo done, don't tell anyone. Contact the PR agency, start going through the journalists at the main, or like Wall Street Journal, all these different, Bloomberg is fantastic. Financial Times, excellent. Do make sure that you have a Medium blog post ready to go. Get it all embargoed, set up a private Slack channel. Now, when you're speaking to a journalist, don't just say, can I pay you for this article? Because that will just like offend them. What you need to say is, you don't get paid enough for your work. And I really respect what you do. And I have to say, when I was speaking to your competitor, they weren't even giving me the time of day. They wanted to censor me. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And then just wait to see how they come back. And if they say something like, well, look, you know, I'm going to have to go through my editor on this, and just slow roll them. Just don't communicate. Just slow everything down. Try someone else. Just next. Run through your Rolodex. Go through all the other journalists, the other publications. Wait until you get a journalist who says, I don't know, I mean, this apartment doesn't pay for itself. I'm up here in San Francisco. It's really expensive. Boy, I mean, look, I've obviously got to put the other side across. And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll start the article with the other side. Yeah. We'll start the article with the other side of the view, but then we'll basically turn it into a puff piece. And then it'll be like, yeah. And so what you do is you get all your friends and you get like this little closed circle on Slack, and they all know about it. And then you start petitioning the exchanges. You say, look, we're ready to go on this. We've got the miners, we've got the public, and we've got the economic majority. And you basically like just persuade them to list it. And then you go public. Now, meanwhile, you've shorted Bitcoin on that high time frame, and you knew what was coming. So you had the embargoed press release, you had, you know, all the support, all the code base, all the website, the logo, everything. As soon as you announce it, you're banking. You are making money on that short. And now everyone can have their own Bitcoin blockchain. Everyone can be on their own network. We can all just speak our own private language. And this, I believe, is the way to unify Bitcoin. This is how we bring it all together. Because frankly, I'm at a part of this debate now where I'm so done in and tired and exhausted that this is the best that I've got.
I love it, man. I love it. Hashtag unify Bitcoin, everybody. Hashtag unify Bitcoin. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to allow everybody to have their own Bitcoin blockchain. And that is how you do it. If you guys want to figure out how to do that, please contact Mr. Chris Dallas on Twitter. So, very awesome, Chris. That was pretty good, man. I actually couldn't stop laughing at multiple points in that. So very cool. Somebody's got to be able to comment on that. That's hilarious. Ryan or Sam, do you guys got any comments on that? No? Okay.
I don't know how I can follow that.
No, I can't follow it.
Even from an InfoSec point of view, right? This is an attack vector. If we don't fork, we've got to get used to the idea. Swapman was saying this last night. We've got to get used to the idea of multiple implementations of Bitcoin coexisting. Because if we don't, we're always going to have the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads. Someone will always try this social engineering vector where they'll say, well, I disagree with something that you're doing, and I'm going to raise the stakes by posturing with power and soft power and gunboat diplomacy, and I'm going to talk to these miners on a back channel, and I'm going to get friendly with the guy that manufactures all the ASIC processors, and I'm going to, you know, threaten this and threaten that and get really loud on social media and claim that I'm the victim. There's no greater oppressor than the oppressed. And when someone feels like they've been victimized, like they're a victim of censorship, for example, they will use that as a weapon. They will use that as a justification for violence, even if it's soft violence, even if it's unjustified aggression over the internet. No one was physically hurting you, but they are aggressing in the sense that they are threatening your value, the store of value you felt you had in Bitcoin. And I am at a point in this debate now where I was initially in favor of divesting power away from the coders and more towards, like Gavin Andreessen said in 2014, not having the block size, be something that the coders dictate, but something that the network is in control of. But how we get from there to the reality of the physics of the world that we're living in, that's what we're really debating. And I feel like the subtext, the MacGuffin, what's really driving this wave and the thrust behind all of this is who really has the power, who gets the land, the food, the guns, the money, who is the one that's in control. And I feel like this is more about who controls the code and the brand and the network effect that Bitcoin has accumulated over the years than it is about the block size. If it's not going to be about block size, it'll be about something else. Something else will always come up. And if we don't fork and we don't do it now, that will always be an attack vector that someone can use. So we must go through our Silk Road moment. Bitcoin is constantly under threat. It is a system that lives under constant stress. It needs these stresses. It's designed, I believe, to withstand these stresses. So if we don't go through this and we don't learn the hard lessons well, then we're forever going to be threatened with this, like, well, I don't agree with you, so I'm going to go partner with this mining group and I'm going to fork and there's nothing you can do about it. We may as well get this over with.
Absolutely agree. I mean, I really think that at least even if we don't fork, we have to put to bed the threat of the fork, right? So we as a community, as we can all come together, this huge thing that we call Bitcoin, we have to understand that it is going to be under constant attack, and this is one of the attacks. So we're dealing with that now, and I think it's going to be interesting because the price seems to not care. I mean, we're back over $1,000. Like I think we're at like 1030 as of this recording, around 1030, 1040. And Tone Vase, of course, has his price point of 915 before he'll go bearish. And we haven't hit it. We just keep going above 900, and today we went above 1,000. So I think that the market agrees that this fork attack vector that we're having right now, I think that the market is thinking that it's not, even that is not enough to stop Bitcoin, or else the price wouldn't reflect it, and so this is really something that Bitcoin has to go through. This is growing pains. And what's something that's really interesting to me is that all these other altcoins that, that claim that they're better than Bitcoin, and all these other coins, you take your pick of the name, they seem to just not they seem to always forget the fact that Bitcoin is the biggest. And so that they seem to always forget the fact that at one point their chain is going to have to go through all of the same stuff that Bitcoin is going through. If once their chain gets big enough, they're going to have all of these new attack vectors and all of these things that they're going to have to go through that Bitcoin went through. And so it's going to be even more difficult for them, because usually they're more complex networks with additional features and all these other things, right? So this is definitely something we're going to have to go through, and this is a part of the growing pains of Bitcoin becoming a global world reserve currency. So this is really cool. I'm sitting back with my popcorn. I think everybody is sitting back with their popcorn, and luckily we have people like Ryan that are sitting back coding with popcorn on the side. So that's really good. We need everybody to keep their heads down and keep programming, because the honey badger is going to be here long after we're dead, and we're just going to try to make it the best that we can. So that's the goal. So very awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Does anybody else have any other anything else to say on the BTU subject? Okay, because I think it's been, Mad Bitcoins, real quick, want to mention Mad Bitcoins has, all week long hosted a bunch of different scaling debates, and Tone Vase has hosted scaling debates. And I think we've had enough people talking about scaling debates, right? So I think I don't need to add too much more to that at this point. I just wanted to get everybody's opinion on the current situation. So very cool. Thanks so much, guys. So we have over 228 viewers right now. As you can hear in my voice, I'm still pretty sick, but I'm here anyway because I love Bitcoin and because I love you guys, and really, really happy to have this conversation get out there into the wild. So with the chats whizzing by, I hope everybody can go ahead and share out the video, Facebook out the video, tweet out the video, let everybody know we're here talking Bitcoin live. You guys can give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down. Definitely give us some comments. We love to reply to you guys in the comments, because we only do the show every other week. So definitely keep in contact with us on the Twitter sphere and in the comment section. So I think we can move on to our final subject of the day here. I know Ryan's got to get going pretty soon, so we're going to see if we can make this fast. The final subject of the day is going to talk about Lightning. So, Lightning is the subject is one of the reasons also why I brought Ryan on the show, because he does know a little bit about Lightning, and as well as Sam. Sam has programmed some stuff with Lightning, and I'm really interested to hear his opinions on this as well. So what I wanted to kind of have a discussion about is, I think that there is some people out there that think that miners are afraid of Lightning, right? Because they are not going to be able to get enough fees. And I think that they're thinking that they're going to be much better with the status quo, keeping Bitcoin at just a few million users. And so I wanted to get everybody's opinion on this, on what if they think that Lightning can help miners, actually help miners make more money and help grow the Bitcoin network. So I wanted to kind of put to bed those fears so that the miners can really understand that Lightning is just going to blow Bitcoin up. It's just going to allow us to have near infinite transactions. And so, so I just wanted to get everybody's opinion. So first we'll go with Ryan on this. So Ryan, as far as your opinion, if SegWit gets passed and Lightning starts to be a real thing, I know you said that you would be happy to accept SegWit if that was the consensus. And so I just wanted to get your opinion. Do you think that miners have anything to worry about with Lightning, or do you think that they're going to just make a ton more money with Lightning? What do you think about how Lightning is going to affect miners?
Sure. So, what I'm thinking about as you were saying this, there are two sort of variables here. One would be the price of Bitcoin. The other is the number of transactions. So if miners are earning, such and such, let's just assume, let's convert it to dollars, because the price of Bitcoin, of course, is very variable when converted. measured in Bitcoin, their revenue might continue to decrease forever, but they might be earning more money for real. So there are two variables. One is, the price of Bitcoin. The other is the number of transactions. Either of these can increase to earn the miners more money. So if the number of transactions stays the same, but the price of Bitcoin increases significantly, then the miners earn more money. Of course, there's sort of another variable here. I'm sort of assuming that as I say this, that the miners are earning money from transaction fees, but I don't actually know if anybody knows offhand right now whether transaction fees have outpaced the block reward or not. I think the block reward is probably still bigger than transaction fees. So right now they're primarily funded through the inflation of Bitcoin, not through transaction fees. So what's happening is, as the number of transactions is basically limited right now. So they're earning more money from the increasing price of Bitcoin. They could also earn more money from a greater number of transactions if it were the case one way or another that the block size increases. As far as whether one approach or not is more profitable to the miners, I would defer to the miners to that. Like, what do they think is the most profitable approach? Because they certainly know their business better than I do. And I would tell them, if I had an opportunity to say something to a miner, and I don't know any miners, although I am friends with some on Twitter, insofar as that means anything. But I think growth is very, very important. It could be either one, right? Like, it could be either the price of Bitcoin or it could be the number of transactions, or both. But it needs to grow. If it stagnates, that's not good for anybody. Like, that's not good for the miners, because it's just going to their margins are going to decrease if that happens. It's going to be even more competitive than it is currently. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's really difficult to say without just throwing out wild guesses. I mean, unless somebody has any real data to put on it. But I don't know that it matters. I could see scenarios occurring either way, where the block size is permanently fixed, or maybe it increases in this roundabout way through one or more soft forks. And then the price of Bitcoin goes up. But that assumes adoption, right? So the real answer here is, how do we get more people to use Bitcoin? That's going to be good for everybody. As far as whether one better for miners, I don't know what to say.
Okay, so very interesting. Let's get Chris's opinion on this. What do you think about the miners being afraid of Lightning, Chris?
I think it's just a meme. I don't think it's based on any kind of facts. I don't know who these miners are. No one has ever like approached me and said, my name is, and I'm a miner. So I don't know who these people are. I don't know where these rumors come from. But when you're using Lightning Network, you're still using Bitcoin. You're sending your payments on a payment channel. You can do that today. Satoshi Pay, by the way, actually uses payment channels. So there's already a working production model in play. You're sending your coins to a multi-signature address. I'm sorry if you can't understand that. If you can't, I'm not going to help you. I'm sorry. Just use the internet. Use the search engine. Just please do your research. And don't believe everything that you hear either. Don't just believe stuff that you read on Reddit and accept it as gospel. In terms of like in theory, if you're asking me like, should a miner be worried about it? I don't see why they would, because of a concept called induced demand. Induced demand, please look it up. And it's a phenomena. It exists. It's very it's copacetic with supply and demand. It doesn't violate any of those terms. But essentially, if you build more lanes on a motorway or highway, it does not help traffic. All that happens is more people use the highway, and actually you get more congestion. And the mistake that a lot of people make is they say, like, someone might say the term, the traffic's really bad. You are the traffic. Like, you are part of that problem. Please understand this concept. And with induced demand, so in order to get Bitcoin to anything like what I hear the big blockers say, and I'm not a big blocker, I'm not a small blocker, I'm not picking a team. I want to see Bitcoin grow. I want to see blocks get bigger eventually. Again, like I said earlier, we're disagreeing about, the order of events and the time scale, really. What we're talking about, to get to any kind of level like Visa, you would need gigabytes and gigabytes. And the blockchain, as I've said before, is a linked list. Right? It's just it's not a database. It's not third normal form. It's not a fucking Oracle database we're dealing with. It's and the reason it's linear in nature, and the reason it's got this state transition that's thermodynamic, is so that we can all agree on the order of events as they happen. Or put it differently, we can't disagree even if we're mistaken. right? That's what consensus means. It's the absence of disagreement, even in the presence of misunderstanding, right? So I can say the sky is pink, but what's consensus isn't whether or not the sky is pink. What's consensus is that I made a comment about the sky and it has the property of the color pink. No one's going to disagree with that in a debate. So the consensus right now is that everyone disagrees, or lots and lots of people disagree. I don't think it's as trivial as there being two camps. The Lightning Network shouldn't have any effect on the miners because P2SH actually generates more bytes. There's more data, and on the Bitcoin network, you pay for that data. So if the block size goes up from 2 megabytes to 4 megabytes to 8 megabytes, we're still nowhere near the size of blocks that we would need to get to Visa, which would be multiple gigabytes. We're talking about marginal increases because people, I think, there's a tendency for people to think linearly rather than exponentially. In order for you to have anything like, first of all, Visa isn't a currency. It's essentially a high transaction, low latency, high transaction network. Bitcoin is not that. Bitcoin is global settlement finality. There's an analogy that I could use. The central banks have what's called M1, and they have their own internal settlement systems between themselves. And then the banks have a system, and that's called M2. And then there's M3, which is what the public uses, the cash. Well, if you go into Starbucks, what are you going to use? Let's say you work at the central bank. Are you going to use M1? Are you going to use the central bank settlement layer to buy your coffee? Of course you're not, because you're not using the right tool for a job. Like if you want to, like, I don't know, when you're building something and you've got an array of tools, you can build with a hammer or you can build with, you know, a screwdriver. You're not going to use a screwdriver to bang in a nail. And the problem is that with what you have with Bitcoin is kind of an open source global settlement system. And what you're asking for is a kind of a loose change kind of M3, or even like a voucher, like a Starbucks voucher. Like right now, if you want to spend your Bitcoins, I would advise you to convert your Bitcoins into vouchers. Like if you spend a lot of money in Starbucks, buy a $50 Starbucks voucher. And there you go, problem solved. Now you don't have to pay a $1, $2 fee every time you transact in Bitcoin. Problem solved right here and now. With the Lightning Network, it doesn't, you're still using the Bitcoin. You're just not putting everything on the chain contemporaneously, right? So what you're doing is you're saying, I'm willing to forego some time. I'm willing to pay a time cost or time value of money in order for there to be a lower fee, in order for there to be scaling. As a customer, as an end user, and a valid stakeholder. Now, as a miner, I'm going to look to the exchanges and the businesses. And as an exchange or a business, a Bitcoin, I'm going to look to my customers. So everyone's in this kind of prisoner's dilemma, sort of quasi Keynesian beauty contest, where everyone's looking at everyone else and second guessing what they're going to do. Does that make sense? But there is a sequence in which this needs to happen, because a miner cannot claim their block reward for 100 blocks. So in the event of a fork, they've got to wait 100 blocks before they get their payment. And they've got to make an anticipation about which fork, which split will eventually be successful, or which one might get orphaned. So they don't want the opportunity costs, nor do they want the energy costs, the electricity bill of mining on a chain that won't work. So what they're going to do is they're going to look to the businesses and see what they're supporting. And the businesses are going to turn to their customers and they're going to say, well, what do you guys want? And what we've seen happen is that the piggies in the middle, the exchanges, nobody wants to be left with this hot potato. Nobody wants to be left on the live rail deciding one way or another. So what they do is they say, well, what do the users want? And what Bitfinex and other exchanges have turned around and said is, we're going to honor both. In the event of a fork, we're going to honor both of these things. I don't personally see why anyone that has any experience longer than the first year of a computer science degree should have any problem with SegWit or Lightning Network. I really don't get the philosophical objection. Before you scale a system, you need to make it efficient, because if you don't, all you're doing is scaling inefficiency. So first of all, I want to make Bitcoin efficient, and then I want to make it scale. And bear in mind that even when you do make it scale, you're talking about 2 megabyte blocks, talking about 4 megabyte blocks, so they're 32. You're still not even touching the sides of Visa. You're still going to need that second layer. And the problem is that if you go ahead with scaling first, it's difficult to go back the other way, right? Once you've scaled the inefficient system, it's difficult then to make it efficient and go back and build that, you know, peer-to-peer network that you always wanted. Does that make sense? So there's a certain order in which I think we need to do things, and that decision-making needs to be kept in the hands of the engineers, the experts, the people that have the wisdom not the people that are necessarily financially motivated to push a particular agenda. Although I'm always willing to listen to ideas wherever they come from.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sam, did you want to comment on this as well, please?
Yeah, sure.
The
So
Lightning Network.
I agree with very much the things that Chris said. A few things to add on to that, which I feel like are happening. A lot of people sort of consider Bitcoin as a startup sometimes, it feels like, at least that approach, like we really need to cater to the user needs right now. And we have all of these competitive altcoins that we need to stay ahead of. And people are very much focusing on that, which I think is important in some ways, but in other ways, like Chris mentioned, we really need to think about what kind of steps we make, because we can't really take them back. Like if we give over power to the miners, for example, to set the block size, it's not like if in a few years times we feel like it's not working out, we're going to tell them, hey guys, could you give the keys back to us? Those kind of things are really hard. Like it's kind of tough in that way. As for Lightning, for me, I think it's one of the most exciting developments in Bitcoin, and one that's eventually inevitable. Like people are saying as well, like whether we fix malleability or not, it is eventually going to happen, and we already see layer 2 solutions. So I don't really feel like blocking that makes a whole lot of sense. And as Ryan already mentioned, like there's 2 ways forward. Either Bitcoin will appreciate a lot, and that will help miners, or the transaction fees will eventually be enough for them as well. I've actually been running some numbers on that. It's not finished yet, but I was kind of curious, like sort of a business plan for Bitcoin, like looking at now towards the future, like maybe in 10, 20 years, what kind of revenues could miners expect, fee-wise, etc. And it's far from finished, so I can't really share that much about it yet, but I was just curious, like personally, like how will this evolve? Is their concern legitimate? And the Chris actually brought up, if we want a parallel Visa right now, it would take so many gigabytes. I actually wondered, like, what if we want to do all of the transactions globally right now on the blockchain? We would need 1.5 to 2 terabyte blocks to fulfill all of the global needs right now. And of course, like a lot of people aren't asking for this. They just want a simple block size increase right now. And like they're saying, well, Lightning is still so long away. Well, it's actually live on testnet. So I feel like I get the concern that they already want the bigger blocks now and say, we'll figure Lightning out one day. But I agree with you that the sooner we get the stable base ready and focus on that, because we're all in this for the long run in the end, we can be patient about this. Yes, it sucks if there are higher on-chain fees. I agree, and I think everyone agrees. And even the Bitcoin core developers all agree that that's not what they want. But it's a matter of, like, are we going to be patient and fix this the right way instantly? Or are we going to keep kicking the can down the road and like have to deal with all of the consequences later on? And I think the smart move there is to go through the short pain, even though it's really not fun for adoption, etc. And it's not good for the users, and there will be complaints. But if we can get through that and we can get through to a Lightning solution, then I think it's going to like dwarf all of these debates in the future, personally.
Absolutely. So let's see, what would you say then to, the miners who might be afraid of Lightning?
I think they shouldn't be afraid about it, because in the end for them, it's kind of more business opportunities, because they can provide the liquidity to the network. It also enables a lot of use cases, like I said before, that aren't currently possible because of the on-chain fees. And in the end, if we get a lot of people using the Lightning Network, more channels will need to be open and closed, and there is always going to be a fee market for them. So a lot of people initially laughed at Luke Jr.'s proposal for 300 kilobyte blocks. And I feel like he mentions that all the time, like he's not a PR guy. And the way that was brought out wasn't smart, because it came right at the time where people felt like, okay, we're going to get like a hard fork proposal for 2 MB or something. And then it was like 300 kilobytes. And people were like, are you serious, man? But the thing there is that if you would counter in the Lightning Network today, then 300 kilobytes would actually be enough. But if you're just going to shove it for like, oh, here's my hard fork proposal, then people will be like, what are you on about? Like, you really need to make it clear, if we would have Lightning today, this is all we would need. But of course, like 300 kilobytes doesn't make sense at this point. We don't need to do that. We don't need to scale down or anything, in my opinion, at least. So right. I think they shouldn't be worried about it because, like I said, I think that's initially why you reached out to me. I put this like infographic kind of thing on Twitter where it's like you can either have like a small part of a very large pie, which is all of the use cases involved in a huge global market, or you can have a large part of a small pie where you have all the on-chain fees, but that's it. Like not that many people end up caring for Bitcoin. So that's really the question. And I think any economical person is going to see the value in having a small part of that huge pie versus just dominating some small network.
Absolutely, I agree there. And I wanted to just read a couple of points and maybe have you guys comment on it from another article too, and from some notes that John Light was kind enough to pass over, because he basically says a couple things like that I found interesting. But first, read a couple of these articles, a couple of these points. So one point is that Lightning makes Bitcoin useful for payments, no waiting for confirmations or using unconfirmed transactions, and using coin analytics and hoping you don't get cheated. This opens huge new markets for Bitcoin payments for everybody. And if Lightning isn't successful, miners don't have to worry about it, right? If it is successful, because of instant payments and micropayments and things like that, then that means more users will come to Bitcoin, and that means more fees for them. So, the price helps miners even more than the rest of us. And then, let's see, I have another couple points. Let's see. The other one was, off-chain transactions are, John says that off-chain transactions are not only better for scalability and cost efficiency, but they're also better for privacy, since these transactions aren't recorded on the global public ledger. So, I haven't heard too many people mention that either, that Lightning actually could help with privacy a lot as well. And, and finally, let's see, where is this? Yeah, you already made the point there, Sam, which is, miners can have a big piece of a smaller pie or a smaller piece of a much, 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 much bigger pie. The answer is kind of obvious there. So I just wanted to kind of put this out there and see what people think. So miners are understood. Does anybody have any points to anything to say about those points?
I'm going to respond with a meme, because I'm beginning to think now this is the only way we can discuss things. It's just with memes, and this is a meme by Bob Barker. And he has a little picture here of a Chinese ASIC miner holding consensus, the point of a knife. And then you got the anti-hard fork BTC lobbyists going, oh no. But then along comes the memory hard POW algo change. And he just shoots consensus right in the head. And there's Bob's face, smiling at the Chinese miner. And there's the corporate pleb. What the fuck? And I think at this point in the debate, it's got so vitriolic and it's got so uncivilized. Memes are the only way we can communicate. It's like communicating with dance. We may as well go back to glyphs and be like cavemenite. And I'm on this team and you're on that team. And we're going to fight over some dirt. I think it's really sad and I'm so tired of it. But everything Sam said. I have not heard of a miner identify themselves as a miner, prove to me that they're a miner, and come up to me and say, I'm against the Lightning Network. Why would they be against that? It doesn't make any sense. If you increase the block size, the blocks will fill up again. Because if you build more highways, lanes on a highway, more people will just drive on those highways. More businesses will come up,
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think we're all in agreement then there. Lightning is going to be good for miners.
Yeah, that was easy.
Reach consensus
When you don't have an antagonistic political force on there.
We have reached consensus. All right. So I think that's really about it for the show. I think we can all agree that Lightning is good for miners, and this is great. So this is what I wanted to get across. So we have over 220 people viewing us at this point. So I just want to say thanks, guys, so much for watching the show. We had a great time. We went over a few important topics, and I'm really glad to get everybody's opinion here. So I just want to thank everybody so much. Thanks so much for the chat. Thanks so much for the live viewers. And Ryan, where can we find you, man?
So you can find us at yours.org. We are live with our testnet preview right now. So you can also, if you want to join when we launch for real, just sign up for our mailing list. Click on the button that says join the preview.
Awesome. All right, Chris, where can we find you?
On the internet. I'm at Mr. Chris Ellis on Twitter and all over social media generally, like a virus.
We can find you everywhere, Chris. And just real quick, I just want to comment on your whale pool conversations as of recent. Those were great. People need to go back and check those out. There was some scaling debates on the whale pool of which you participated in, and I thought those were really great. So I had a great time listening to you guys on there for a few hours yesterday. So I encourage people to check that out. And then Sam, where can we find you, sir?
On the internet as well. SD Wouters on Twitter. I just wanted to also say, Ryan, good luck with the last few months of getting it on the mainnet. That's going to be like quite a challenge, and I guess also very exciting for you after all of that work on it for all those years. So good luck with that. I hope like it's a very good experience, and happy to be part of the show. Thank you for inviting me, Vortex.
Awesome, man. Really glad to have you guys here. Got a lot of good information for the viewers, and I think everybody had a good time. So we'll be back here again, of course, in 2 weeks. We had to do the show today on Monday instead of Sunday because I'm still sick, but next time we should be good to go, and hopefully we can get John Light on that episode as well. So thanks so much, guys, for joining, and until next time, keep talking Bitcoin.